Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance.
Welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. And you know those moments when life just flips the script on you? You're doing everything right, following the rules, chasing the next goal, playing the game, and suddenly the universe says, nope, new direction, sweetheart. Well, here's the thing, those moments aren't punishment, they're portals, and they're an invitation to reinvent, rewire, and remember who the hell you are. And I think this is going to be so amazing because today's conversation is for every woman who's ever asked herself, is this all there is? Why is this happening to me? What the? Because what if the detour is the destination? My guest today is the brilliant Lori McDowell. She's an engineer turned author whose 60th birthday gift from the universe came wrapped in a pink slip. Growing up, she was teased and called Lori Tori, which I love, and she'll tell us all about that story, and felt insignificant as we all have from time to time. But she was super smart, which led her to become an engineer. So all of those things led her to where she is today, which is what she's going to share with us about. And she went from this top performer to fired for cause. How many of us have been fired for cause and we don't even know what the cause was? And somehow it became the best thing that ever happened to her. So Lori's story will remind us that reinvention isn't something that you wait for after the breakdown. It's something you choose moment by moment, thought by thought, heartbeat by heartbeat. So pour your coffee, settle into your comfy chair, and let's dive into a conversation about freedom, intuition, and the fierce feminine art of starting over no matter what age you are, which, I love that because the older we get, the better we are. We're like fine wine. Lori, I'm so thrilled to have you here. Your story is going to light a fire into every woman listening. So let's start where you are today, because I know your story is so deep, and we'll talk about some of those valleys and know how rewarding that is. But I want you to share in this moment who you are right now so that people realize that it's not about the story, but it's where you are today. And we'll talk about where you're going in the future.
Sure, Debbie. Well, first, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation. So today I run my own business. It's called Reimagine You Strategies. And what we do, I'm an author. I have my book, The Reinvention Mindset. It's won award. It's a best-selling book. I have 4 other books that I have chapters in. It might actually be 5 now. And I have more
Wow.
books that I plan to write. Yet what I'm focused on right now mostly is 2 things. One, I speak. I love speaking to audiences, whether it's inspirational talks. I gave a talk to the Society of Women Engineers just Saturday, or whether it's like speaking at summits and podcasts like this. And I do retreats. I do my own retreats, and I do what I call done for you transformational retreats. So I help other business leaders, coaches, business owners, even corporate world, if they want to do a retreat and they don't know how and they don't have the time and they don't like the details. I do all that, and I take the retreat, everything from logistics to facilitating to making it the perfect event to making sure the bathrooms are clean and the food is good, all the details, so that they can just show up and be brilliant. And that I love that because that lets me serve people, which is one of the things I'm good at, plan and travel all over the world and have incredible experiences. So I'm really living a life I love. If you ask me what would I want to be doing right now, I can't really think of anything else.
Yes, I love that so much. And there's so much to unpack there. So we're going to get to all of it. There's a great country western song, and I'm going to forget the name of the artist, but the title and the story of the song is, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing? It would be this. This is what's so brilliant. And especially, I really believe that once we get to that second half of our lives, we as women begin to look at, okay, what am I here for? And then when you really dive deep into your own authenticity and you uncover it, because it's always here, you're
Mhm.
in this bliss. I mean, just listening to your whole face is lighting up. And I love all of that so much. A best-selling author and doing retreats. And I don't know if anybody on this call really wants to do retreats, but if you are ever thinking about it, there is so much to it. People ask me all the time, well, how do you give retreats? I've done retreats, and they are, as you said, well, you didn't say it exactly. So they're a little bit of a pain in the behind because there's so much to do. So having it done for you is genius. So we'll talk about the retreats here in a second. I do want to share, though, you do have an assessment that you want to give away. So Lori's going to give us some freebies. So we're going to talk about those. But the first one is to really just identify where you're at. So tell a little bit about what that is. And then we're going to see how you created that and what things you really want to uncover about yourself to find your authentic self.
Sure. Yeah, the assessment, I call it the celebrate your soul assessment.
That's
And
lovely.
because I just feel when you have success in your soul, that's when you're really successful. I mean, that's success is not something you see on paper or in a
Right.
bank account or in your promotions. It's something on the inside. And
Yep.
I created this assessment to kind of look at different areas of your life because you can't figure out where you're going if you don't know where you are. And this is kind of like, where am I? So it looks at different areas of your life, like spirituality, goals, financial,
Mhm.
personal, health and wellness. And you rate yourself in these different areas on based on these questions. And you figure out, because if you're 10 out of 10 on one area of life, you don't necessarily need to focus on that one. You got that one. You can look at some other areas. So it's a great starting point. And I tell people, take it when you first get it. And then if you're doing any kind of personal growth activity or anything, take it again a few months later and see if you've improved, see how you've changed. So it's a great tool to do over and over again and,
Yeah.
see, wow, this is really working. I am getting closer to being where I want to be.
And I love that so much, because just to start this conversation of sharing with women, this is about our soul. This isn't about all of the how to do your social media, how to get more likes on Instagram, how to do this, how to be successful. Because success comes from your soul. It really truly does. And just to begin with that component, because you've done that, you've had some really interesting experiences. So I really want to start with the first one, which is sort of the apex. We'll go back to some of the earlier ones in your life, but tell us about the pink slip, because honest to goodness, we have all been, and this is one thing that I've always shared with every client or friend of mine that ever got fired. Yay, that's the best thing that could ever happen. Now, it doesn't feel that way then, but here is the thing. That's one of the biggest pivots or catalysts that you had that shifted you to where you are today. And there was a lead up, and we'll talk about those. But tell my audience the story about the pink slip, because ladies, this is, all of you have probably gone through something similar. You either knew you had to get out of a job, or the universe said, here, I'm going to help you get out. And it's called firing. So tell us about that story.
So I had a job. I had this job for 10 years and I loved my job. I thought, okay, this is a great job. At the time I was 59. I was like, I'll do this job till I retire, maybe for another I had a son in college, another 4 or 5 years, and then I'll do something different. I had all these plans. And it was a good job. I was happy. I worked from home. I had flexibility. My boss was great. Well, my boss decided to retire before I did, unfortunately. And when he retired, everyone in the department thought I was going to get that job because I was kind of the next obvious step to get the job. I was top employee, had the biggest customers, with the highest technical woman in this company. And I didn't get the job. And I didn't even get interviewed for the job. And they brought in a man in his early 40s, had some experience as a manager, but no experience really in this area, and was just not, let's just say, I don't like to talk bad about anyone, yet he and I did not have the same values, let's put it that way. He was a micromanager, and he had wanted us to do things that I was not going to do, like lie, like tell people, my clients, things that weren't true, like just not going to do it. So I was still very successful. I was like, I was the face of the company at conferences. Everyone knew me. I was like the technical expert. So I didn't really think about it. I'm like, you know what, this guy, he'll be in and out. He's on the way to be CEO or something else. I'll deal with him. Yet the job I love became this job I couldn't stand anymore because we had, meetings 3 times a week. It's like, I don't need to talk to you 3 times a week. When I need something, I'll call you. And it just was not a fun job anymore. Yet I'm still thinking like, okay, I can handle it a few more years. And we had a meeting. It was a 2-day meeting. So it had a hotel stay and it was about 4 hours from where I lived. So that morning we had a customer call. I was on the phone, my boss was on the phone, our company attorney with this client, and we went through all the steps to onboard this client. So it was like everything was normal. And then I get in my car and I drive my 4 hours to this meeting. I go to check into the hotel and the woman at the desk says, "Oh, I'm sorry, your room was canceled." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Must be some mistake. Do you have a room available?" And it's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, reinstate it." So I reinstate my room, which is good. I cost the company $150 there. you know? Yay. One of my coworkers who was at the meeting was checking in at the same time. And I said to him, I was like, "Is your room canceled?" And he's like, "No, my room's here." And we're joking around. He's like, "Oh, that's the way they tell you you're fired." Like, and we're laughing about this. So I was supposed to meet my boss to discuss. We had something on the agenda. So I'm supposed to meet him, and I text him and I say, "Where should I meet you?" And he says, "Come down to the conference room." So I come down to the conference room. I have my computer with me because he asked me to bring it. And when I get in the conference room, there's a man sitting there, the vice president. I'm like, "What is he here?" And suddenly, like, something felt weird. And my boss says, "I have HR on the phone." And this voice from the phone says, "This is Angie from HR. We are terminating you for cause. Turn in your laptop and your company credit card and go home." And I was just like, "What?" I mean, I was in shock. I was like, "You made me drive 4 hours to fire me? You couldn't have told me this morning?" Like, like, what did you think? I wouldn't turn in my laptop? I'm not a thief. I've worked here for 11 years. And it was like I was being treated like a criminal. Like I had to be in person so I could turn this in. And they made up this cause thing. I was like, "What did I do? Like, what do you mean I'm being?" And it was like they had been searching through my computer and found that like I downloaded something during office hours. I'm like, "Well, I work from home. We have one internet. I don't know about you, but you can download stuff in the background and still be working. And just because you're downloading something doesn't mean you're not working." And like all these, somebody put a picture of LinkedIn and they said, "Oh, of a conference." Then it said, "You went to this conference and we paid and you're talking about something else." And it was just the stuff they came up with was ridiculous. And I was angry. I was embarrassed. I was confused. And I was terrified because I'm the breadwinner. And it's like, okay, I have a son in college. You're paying me till the end of the day. I don't have any other income. What am I going to do? So I started the drive home and it was awful. And calling my husband and my son and telling them what happened. And all of a sudden, as I got about halfway home, I thought, I don't have to go to work tomorrow. And it was like, I don't have to go to work tomorrow. And it was just like this weight was lifted off my shoulder. Like, I'm free. This job, which I knew I hated and didn't have the courage to quit, which was gone. And it was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Yet I'm not going to work for someone else where I can have a job that I love. And in one day, it can become a job that I hate. I said, I'm not giving anyone else that much power over me ever again. And then I just started figuring out what I was going to do next.
I think that's so empowering for women to hear the story. Number one, from the perspective that we can have what we perceive as this, because it was comfortable. It was a comfortable job and you were very competent around it. And yet, knowing who you are today, that was not the genius of who you were here to be on this planet. And for us to get in a little too much comfort is when we lose sight of who we truly are. So that's the first thing I want to share with women that are listening to this is you may have that beautiful job, but as you said, the universe just kept getting you a little more uncomfortable, sending in the 40-year-old or whatever he was. And I've been there, done that with employees and bosses and all of this kind of conversation that you feel like everything's going swimmingly, but in your soul. So it's interesting how your soul, it didn't take her very long. The shock is what will get us spiraling. And so just getting on that drive, maybe that was planned by the universe as well, just to give you a moment to reflect. But that just that sense of, wow, what is the good in this? Because I always talk about gratitude, and it just lit up as you were driving home. The gratitude of, oh my gosh, this is different. Now, speaking from where you have with this soul assessment now and what your soul was telling you in that moment, what prepared you, do you think, all of the different lines of through lines that came for you? Because there were some tragic elements in your life as well. And I want you to reflect on those and bring us through that timeline of how your soul has been speaking to you your whole life. And comfort is great for a time. Yeah, but the fact is that's our head talking. That isn't our soul talking. So share some of that timeline, that through line of how your soul has been talking to you, talking about some of the stuff with your sister and yourself in the accidents.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, Debbie had mentioned I was smart. So I was studying to be an engineer. I always had the straight A's, and I was always the person people were telling me, like, be quiet, you talk too much, like shutting you down. You're too out there. And when I was in high school, my younger sister, she was in eighth grade at the time, was hit by a car, had a near fatal accident, was in a coma for months. She didn't die, but she was brain damaged, and life was never going to be the same. And that hit me at a time when I was about to go off from college, and it was definitely a sense of loss, because I lost the sister, that we thought we had all these plans. We'd grow up together, we'd have kids, we'd travel to family vacations. And in a way, I kind of lost my parents at that time, because suddenly, their 100% focus was on my sister and keeping her alive and getting her through this. So I learned two things from that experience. One, I learned that I could be self-sufficient, that, if I had to, I can take care of myself and I could accomplish things. And probably more important, I learned that life isn't guaranteed, that, you can put stuff off, you can wait to do stuff, and you never know what's going to happen. And so don't put something off. If there's something I want to do it, because you never know what, tomorrow may not be here. You never know what's going to happen. So I tried to live my life, and I did. I experienced a lot of things. I became brave. If there was something I really wanted to do, I found a way to do that in general. So that was the first lesson where I got that message, like, okay, live your life to the fullest. Don't hesitate. And then the next message came it was about maybe 9 months later. I was in college and I was driving home to visit my family. I had not seen them in a couple months. It was my sister. I think it was the first time she was home, that I was going to see her after she got out of rehab. And I live in northern Jersey, so it's pretty crowded. I was on the New Jersey Turnpike, a 4-lane highway. It was a Friday night, rush hour time, so it was crowded, and it was pouring rain. And I'm in a hurry to get home, so I'm in the left lane and bopping to the music and driving probably faster than I should have. But traffic's moving, but it's crowded. And I hit a puddle, and my car started to spin, and I'm trying to, like, I kind of remember this. I had this in driver's ed. What do I do? Do I step on the gas? Do I turn into the spin? And I couldn't control it. The car just started to spin. And I found myself, like, looking, no control, spinning around, and suddenly, like, looking into headlights coming towards me. And all I could think of was, like, please God, don't let me die. My parents can't take another accident. Like, please let it be mine, or let me be okay. And I just kind of braced for impact. And, as they say, your life flashes behind your eyes. It seems like, the whole thing probably took 10 seconds, but it seemed like an hour. And suddenly I found myself on the right shoulder of the highway, facing forward. And I really, like, I kind of, like, looked around, like, am I dead? Like, what happened? I could not believe this. And I was fine, and my car was fine. And then I thought, oh my God, there must be, like, a big pileup out there. And I looked out in the highway, and the cars are still going by 60 miles an hour. Nobody had an accident. So somehow I went across 4 lanes of traffic, did a complete turn in the pouring rain, in the dark, and I didn't hit anything. And I just got this message then, like, divine intervention. You have a purpose, and your life was saved for this purpose. So,
Yeah.
and then I heard that and I always remembered it, but I kind of went into the should, where I did all the things I should do. I got my college degree. I got a good job. I got married. I got a nice car. I bought a house. I had a kid. Took a while. I mean, but you do the should. The things were expected of us, and I never stopped and thought, is this what I want to do? Is this really what I mean? And I was successful. I did all those things. Yet through my whole career, as I switched jobs and looked around, I always felt like I was looking for something and it was never there. So my whole career, something was always missing. I'd get to this level and I'd be really successful. And then it's like, nah, I'm bored with that. Or like I never found that purpose. I never found it in corporate. I never found it in research. I never found it in sales. I was looking for it. I kept trying different sports and different activities. It's like I was always searching for something and I never quite found it. And I had a level of success. I made a good salary. As you said before, I was comfortable. It was easy. I was satisfied. I wasn't miserable. And I think that's almost the worst place to be.
Hmm.
It's like, when you're miserable, you're forced to change it. But when you're mad, it's like, okay, who am I to complain? And it's probably not any better anywhere else. It's probably me. I just can't be happy. I just can't be satisfied.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the meh. The meh. That's a word now, I guess, in the dictionary. MEH. Meh. Like life is eh. And it's so important for us to reflect on when those messages come, which I find so fascinating because I've taught as a trainer, a corporate trainer, engineers, right? And groups in a whole room of engineers. Now, I am not an engineer brain, trust me. Like, I don't even act like them. And I'm always fascinated when I speak to them because there's a whole different dynamic of an engineer, yet you have now blended that. And I believe just from your stories that the engineer is a talent that you have, but also there is this beautiful intuition that just has been residing inside of you for many, many, many years. And so, speak to how you feel that you pushed away a little bit of the intuition. I know you said I did all the right things, and that was one of those ways. But I know that she spoke to you multiple times during your life, a couple of times very clearly. And by the way, if you ever have never been on the New Jersey Turnpike, people, this story that she just told, as far as I'm concerned, what happened was an angel came and picked your car up and put it around. Because I hear these stories all the time and we have no logical explanation for them. But it's so beautiful that it is that energy, that consciousness, that spirit, whatever word we want to give to it. But there's a part of you that was connected to your engineer, which is fine. But also there was this other voice that she would talk to you. So tell me some times when you maybe heard her, but you went, no, I have to be doing this over here. This is the thing I'm designed to do. When the reality is, you know who you are now. So tell me some experiences that showed up for you.
Yeah, I definitely had that experience where I ignored it. And I can think of even when I first started my career. I mean, I was trying to decide, do I want to be an art major or an engineer? Because I loved art and sculpture and I had a scholarship to go to some art school. And then, that was my intuition telling me that. In the meantime, I looked at the salary of engineers and I said, well, I'm good at math and I like chemistry and chemical engineers make a lot of money. So I went that way. And then I said, all right, well, I'm going to work in the environmental area. So I was like, okay, that's kind of a nice, my intuition telling me make a difference in the world. And I did. I actually accepted a job for less money. And then it was kind of like, well, you need to go to grad school to get. It was just all these little things where, I was fighting it the whole way, and then
Mm-hmm.
even in my activities, oh, I'll do this, I'll volunteer for this. Oh, wait a minute, your boss says, no, I don't want you volunteering. You need to focus on your
Mm-hmm.
job. So I always had these little detours, and yet something would bring me back in. But I deep down, I knew that the detours were when I was the most happiest. When I was
Mm-hmm.
when I was serving on a volunteer committee or working with a nonprofit or planning an event, that was fun. The job was okay. Like it was good, but when I got to travel to other countries and meet other people in different cultures, that was fun. the parts of me that my intuition was telling me, when I got to speak, when I got to travel, when I got to do fun stuff, that was always what I enjoyed. Yet I kept bringing myself back to that main engineer because that was the right thing to do, and that was what paid the bills, and that was, the bread and butter that we had to follow the rules. So yeah, it took me about 30 years to figure it out. And I'm so grateful that I was fired in such a horrible way, because I know had I just been laid off and given 6 months severance and had it been gentle, I probably would have gone and gotten another job.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad that I was, thrown off the cliff, because then I didn't,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, finally, enough is enough.
And I think that's what our soul calls us. It knows what we will need in order to make those choices. So reflecting back, because I call it shoulding on ourselves, we should do whatever. So what is your sage wisdom because nobody can tell us, even if you heard something like this or this story when you were in your shoulds, it wouldn't have necessarily moved you off of it, but it would have planted the seed. So for purposes of planting a seed for women that are going through their shoulding on themselves right now, that they can feel the inkling, and even this is sparking something in them that they thought, I feel like that. And yet I'm too afraid. So, what are some things that you can share that if someone had shared them with you, perhaps you would have, and there's only divine timing. So, nobody's in the wrong timing. It's just a
Right.
matter of giving breadcrumbs to somebody right now. What are the breadcrumbs you could share with a woman that's shooting on herself about where she is? What's the possibilities that are there for her?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is, if you're feeling like something's missing, that you feel like you're always searching and you're never quite finding what you're searching for, that's a good sign that maybe it's more than just searching. You might need a wholesale, like, reinvention. Let's throw the whole thing out. Or so that's one sign. If you feel like you're never quite satisfied, there's always something missing, there's always a little bit you're looking for, that's a good sign. And then, joy. If you're I now, since I left my job, the only time I set an alarm typically is if I have a flight to
Mm,
catch, because other than that, I wake up in the morning. Whereas, before I would hit the snooze button 6, 7, 8 times sometimes. Now I'm up before the alarm most days. I'm up when I'm ready, and I am happy to get up. So if you find yourself hitting that snooze button, or just, oh, you come home from work and all you want to do is have a drink, or, do something because you're miserable, think about it. 'Cause the thing that we don't realize is that there are so many possibilities. I mean, you can
mhm.
create a career, a business, a life from almost anything. And I never knew that, because that was not what they teach you in school. That
Right.
was not what they teach you, through, you feel like these are your only paths and I have to do this or this or this. And it's not true. There's, like, you could, like, what I do now, like, who would have thought I could plan retreats for people and that I could make a business out of it? You can. People can make a business out of, like, somebody makes a business out of making motivational stickers. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things. There are so many things you could do. Um, and I guess my last message is for people is, if something doesn't feel right, our natural tendency is to say, it's me. I'm at fault. I'm not good enough. And it's never you. You're always perfect. You're always
Mhm.
good enough. You're just in the wrong situation, or you're not where you're meant to be. So don't ever blame yourself, and be willing to explore it. You still might decide that it's too hard or you don't want to change, but at least you know that there are other options out there.
Yeah. And it's so important to hear all of what you just said, especially you can start a business doing anything. And I want to just key in on the retreats a little bit, because I'm a big fan of retreats. I don't know who needs to hear this, but the retreat business is an thriving industry right now, because people that want to go on vacations, especially women, they want to feel something that's more congruent rather than just going and taking a tour someplace. And so I want you to speak a little bit about retreats, not just from the perspective that you can do them, but that any person that's out there, that they even had an inkling one time in their life, like, I'd love to give a retreat. They don't even know what they want to give it on, but they feel that they want to lead somebody in a path that, first of all, there are so many different types of retreats. That's what's so incredible, is that whoever's thinking that they might want to lead a retreat and they don't even know what it is, you would probably have some really great information for them. But let's just talk about the idea, especially the people that you're working with, the women that you're working with, or the clients of different types that people wouldn't even imagine that they could do. And that this is an outlet. This isn't just one way that somebody could build a business. They don't have to do what you do necessarily, because you can lead them into sharing their voice, because that's really what retreats are. So let's talk about what a retreat process looks like, who would want to do it, types of retreats that are ideas out there, because it's a beautiful topic and we may take a lot of time doing it. So
Yeah.
see how much we get in.
The difference between a retreat and a vacation is twofold. One is a retreat is kind of like a sacred container. So you're taking people and you're putting them in. So by definition, the retreat is community. You can go on a group vacation and you can be in this group, but there's no connection. So that's one of the difference. And then a retreat usually has a purpose, some kind of purpose. Now there are lots of different purposes, but there is a purpose for it. So that's the difference between a retreat and just a vacation, and simplifying it. Retreats can be anything. Like there are different types of retreats, corporate retreats. They could be leadership retreats for the executive team where they're like working on that. They could be employee retreats for team building. You can do retreats as awards. Someone wins, has good performance and they go on a retreat. Retreats can be like a fulfillment. You have a program or you have a group and you want to give them something special. So you offer a retreat as a way for them to connect. Um, Transformational retreats, particularly done to help businesses grow, are what I mostly specialize in. And what those are is they're a retreat where the leader has a community, whether they're prospects or clients or a mixture of both, and they bring them together for a purpose. And the purpose is really to, it depends. It could be anything. Like I said, I've done one retreat for a woman who was a ghostwriter, and the purpose of the retreat was for people to get, make progress on their book. And it had very few activities. We brought a bunch of people working on their books to a beautiful location on the beach, and they sat there and wrote. Not much going on. And we had good food and we had some social activities, and that was it. They really didn't have a lot of planned activities. Then I've been to retreats, where we did hiking and all different kinds of activities and breath work and yoga. But what a retreat is it's trying to take you from who you are today to someone, through a journey to some kind of an improvement. So whether it's spiritual improvement, whether it's you wrote your book more, whether it's you learned, I've seen retreat for some people who want to practice acting or singing, or, you can learn a skill at a retreat. A lot of people do retreats for quilting where people come and they work on quilts. But it takes you on a journey from where you are today to where you're someone different. And why they're great for businesses is because as a retreat leader, people get to spend time with you. They get to connect with you on a much deeper level. They get to really know you and love you. And when they do that, they want to buy something from you. They don't even really care what it is you're selling. They just want it by the end of a retreat. So if you have a business, you can use a retreat to, it kind of can fulfill your existing clients. You're giving them this great experience, but you're also bringing in new people, and you're selling them what your program is, whether it's coaching, whether it's book writing, whatever it is. And because they've gotten to spend this time with you in this incredible experience, they want it before you even offer it, pretty much. So
yeah. I love that. I love retreats. And I just, over the years, have seen so many different types of retreats, as you said, from a corporate retreat. And I remember years ago when I was in a women's group and they said, we're going to do a retreat for the board. And I went, oh, a retreat? Well, it was at somebody's house. Well, okay, those can be a retreat, and not to diminish that at all. I do love a retreat that's in a remote location or a beautiful location, because it gets us out of our minds and our heads. And as you said, it's so beautiful because you make such a connection with the people that are at the retreat. So you can use it for sales. You could have an art retreat, a music retreat, anything this is why I love sharing this with women, is that they may think I don't have any talents, but if you just brought a small circle of people together, 5 to 10 or even more, but it's intimate, and you share your authenticity and your talents, and then they get to up level or improve who they are. It's magic. It truly is magic. So I know you have another little gift regarding retreats that you can share with the listeners. So tell us about that.
Sure. It's called the Breakthrough Blueprint, and it's 7 powerful reasons why your vision deserves a transformational retreat. And it just goes through 7 reasons,
Mhm.
7 ways a retreat can help your vision, your thoughts. So it's, gives you some of the benefits a retreat can do. Because yeah, like as you said, Debbie, you can do a retreat for anything really. I mean, like I said, there are retreats for, you can do a retreat on relaxation, where all we're going to do is we're going to sit and we're going to relax and we're going to do
Yep.
calming exercises for 3 days. I mean, I know there's a retreat. I've never been on one where they go to, this one's a little odd, but where they actually take people and they all sit in a dark room for like a day or 2 days. And it's
Mhm.
like, so you can, like I said, anything you can imagine, you can make a retreat around it. And that's what I love to do, because that's the creative. I love to think of creative ways. Like I have one person that I'm hoping to do this retreat if everyone wants to do an art retreat. But a woman introduced me to a graffiti artist in Houston, downtown Houston, who gets paid to paint the buildings. But he actually has a plate where you can actually hire him to come and work with you and let you paint the building with him. I was like, that would be just such a cool thing to do as part of a retreat.
It so would be. And I think that's the one thing that most women that I've run into that are looking, they want to be a coach, and that's great. None of that's challenging per se, but just to have this ability to share something special. It could be a knitting retreat, as it could be the meditation retreat, it could be the cold plunges. You could do a retreat on anything, but if you have a passion, what a great place to do that. And so all of these gifts that you're giving are in the show notes, because finding out what your soul is saying to you and then seeing how that could transform into a retreat is fantastic. This is just beautiful, wonderful, juicy stuff. So I want to talk about us as wise women, because what happens when we go through menopause and we turn to a certain age, my very humble version of that is our brains are rewired, which is talked about in a book called Menopause Brain, Lisa Marconi. And it's where we became wise women. But also, this happened to you. This pink slip thing happened when you were 60. Now, this is when I was growing up, and my grandmother, right, she was looking at retirement and thinking about sitting on the porch and rocking. And yet nowadays, we're beginning to think about, who do we want to be in this next chapter, not just the second half, but even the third act. And so I want you to speak to women about how important it is that we still have a viable message. We still are vital. We are wise women, and we have so much to give. Number one, to all these young ladies that are following influencers, there is a different way. But let's talk about what that wisdom brings to you, how you teach, how you show up in the world, and what you can share with these beautiful ladies.
Yes, yeah, we are definitely, like I said, women over 50, over 60 are in a place where, well, we've got all these years of learning. So we've got all this wisdom, but I think we have a different perspective, a different mindset right now, in that, we're not necessarily, we want to have successful businesses, but we don't want to hustle anymore. We don't want to be like working nonstop. And yet we still want the same success. And I feel like that's really something that we can share with everyone. We can have money, success, clients without doing the hustle. And it's just a different way. Like I'm not going to do that when I have these people say, okay, you need to make, 50 calls a day. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. It's like, I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
It's, because we have that, wisdom and that learning, and we know that there's just so many different ways to do things, and there's so much inside of us. I think we've kind of spent these years building up all this knowledge and all these experiences, and now it's kind of like, well, we can let them out, and we just know so much. And it's a way to, most of the people I know, the successful people, particularly women, I mean, I know some younger, but I would say most of them are over at least over 50, if not over 60. And it's just because I mean, we're so vibrant, we're healthy, we've lived, lives where we take care of ourselves, and yet we have that knowledge and that we're not as stressed about, those little things. We learn that those little things don't make a difference anymore. So you can focus more on the big picture.
Right. Don't sweat the small stuff. I think there's a book called that. It's so important. And you said something that to me is one of the most important messages to women in general is that we've all bought into that masculine playbook. Nothing wrong. It's not about men or women, but it's a masculine playbook, which is the drive and the hustle and keep going and push hard. When the reality is that when we balance it with this feminine energy of connection and communication and intuition, we can make the same decisions that we would fret over and worry about and try to figure it out from an intuitive place and say, oh, well, that was easy. Instead of, I've been using this easy button, that easy button from, yeah, you got one too. Because that's what we want. That's what our heart and our soul is absolutely craving, is the ease and grace of it. So for all of the women that are out there still in the hustle, because there's plenty of them out there. I am a recovering workaholic. I know that methodology so intimately. But the fact is that we don't have to do it that way. There is a new paradigm. And so when I speak to women, especially that we've acknowledged it and then we're living it, tell us about how joyful it is to wake up every day and be you.
It really is. And it's funny because I finally kind of, and it's like I said, it took years, but it's kind of like, you know what? I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be. I'm exactly who I want to be. And if you don't like me, one of my coaches once told me, what other people think of you is none of your business. And I love that. It's like, if you don't like me, that's your problem. That's not my problem. We're not the right people. I don't care if you don't like me anymore. I mean, yeah, sure, everybody loves to get praise, and if you do something, you like people to tell you, I loved your book or I love your thing, but you can't please anybody. And I think that's really I'm more concerned about the people that want to be around me, the people I want to be around, than the people that I don't care, that don't like, there's billions of people in the world. We're not going to resonate with everybody. And now you're at this point where, like, well, there's enough people that I will resonate with. And I'm not competing with anybody anymore. That was a big change. In corporate, you're always competing, particularly with other women, because you're like, well, gee, they're not going to promote two women, so I have to be the best. And now it's kind of like I have friends that, I was at an event recently where we shared an Airbnb, and it was like 6 women. And we had just like this amazing dinner where we cooked dinner, and then we sat around the table and we all took turns saying what we liked about each other and what we appreciated. And it's like, what an incredible, like, that I'm getting paid to do this amazing thing. This is my business, is hang out with these amazing women and tell them all how much I love them and what I appreciate with them. And it's just such a fun experience. And and it's funny that it can be amazing, and some of these women are very successful and some are not quite there yet, and it doesn't really matter. That's what's interesting. Like, everybody has, we see people who are, oh, this person makes millions of dollars. It's like, well, they're doubting themselves as much as I am. They're just further along, and you learn not to worry about that, and that's what's so great. So I think when you find joy in your life and you just love what you do and you're happy with it, it really doesn't matter what your results are, because you've got that joy inside no matter what. And that makes the good results come.
I think as you're sharing about that this is one of those other masculine constructs, is the competition, right? So it's set up in the playbook that way. We have to compete. And so women, this is an opinion, we've distorted that because that's not our nature. Our nature is to be collaborative, to actually be, I always use the example of women say you went to a bachelorette party and all the women show up in the bathroom, right? And they've had a couple of cocktails and they're just loving each other, right? We're all hugging and blah, blah, blah. That's who we are naturally when we sat around the campfires back in prehistoric times, but that's who we are. And we've lost sight of that. So one of the things that I always talk about, Marie Forleo calls it compare Schlager, right? We're comparing ourselves. to whatever, I don't even know. And then that leads into this whole concept of influencers. So if you were to speak to a young woman, now I used to say talk to your younger self, but our younger selves didn't have the internet. We were just in school. But if you were able to speak to a woman that's in her 20s right now, that is out there trying to be on fire, doing all the things that you did, but she's also impacted by this influencer culture of the internet, how would you share with her what her future self might say to her? Step into those shoes of that future self and say, what beautiful sage wisdom would you share with her?
Right. Yeah, this one's interesting because I actually spoke to an audience just Saturday of, like I said, it was about 350 women engineers, and about half of them were probably, college age, early in their career. And I think the one thing that I wanted to tell them, and I made it clear that, like, when you were born, you were made in the image of God. You were perfect. Nobody questioned that. A baby just born is perfect. They're the perfect baby. And yet life puts all this stuff on top of you, and you grow up and you have these doubts and these questionable, and you're not as good enough and you didn't do that. Yet that those are all roles. None of that is you. And if I take you, you're a wife, an employee, you're a boss, you're an engineer, you're a student, you're a mother, whatever those roles are, they're all put on. And you may not be perfect at any of those roles, because most of us are not. But if I take you and I put you in a desert island and I strip all those roles and you're just you're still that perfect person, that perfect you. Like, none of us, we're all the perfect you. Nobody else is a more perfect Debbie than you are. Nobody's a more perfect Lori. So just remember that, no, what you do is just what you're doing, but you are perfect at the heart. You're the perfect you. And if you live your life knowing that, then all the stuff around you won't get to you anymore. And you don't have to compete, and you don't have to feel like you're less than because you're not, these influencers who have millions of followers or are making, $1 million at 25, because you know that you're the perfect you and you're exactly who you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing sage wisdom that every woman, no matter where they are in their life, but particularly, my heart goes out to younger women because we didn't have to go through. We had to go through our own stuff. You had the teasing in school and all of that, but it wasn't anywhere at the level that it is today. My advice always is just get off the screens, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there's so much more to enjoy just going to a retreat, reading your book, taking some of these gifts that you're sharing with the audience to look inside, because that's where the answers are. They're inside. They're
Yeah.
not out there. That out picturing comes from the inside. So in this last few moments, I want you to share with this audience, what is the biggest lesson that you have been given in your life that was your gift to you, but also the gift that you can share with the world?
I think it truly is knowing that, I'm good enough, and that, my value's there, and it's non-negotiable, that I have value. Because I think for most of my life, a lot of my life, I was wondering, am I good enough? Can I do this? And to just know that, yes, we're all, we are good enough. We are valuable. We're inherently exactly where we're meant to be, and that, appreciate that and know your value, because you all have it, whether you're 12 or 100, you have value. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're confident in that value, things don't bother you as much. People don't get to you. You can make a mistake because it doesn't affect you. It's just a mistake or a chance to learn. So just recognizing that inherent value that's in all of us.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. We all are perfect and have 100% of the value that we think we believe is out there somewhere. So, where can my audience connect with you? I'm going to put in the show notes the gifts. Do you prefer your website, social media? Tell us how we can connect with you.
Sure. Probably, I'm still in email. I'm in my 60s, so I still use email. My email is lmcdowell at reimagineyou, the letter u.net.
I'll
So
put that
you
in
can
the
connect
show notes.
there.
I'll put that in
Yeah.
the show notes. Mhm.
And then I am on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. I'm probably the most active on those two, although I'm certainly not an influencer in any way, but I do post it, at least once a week on both platforms. So you can find me there as well. And
Well,
I'm under,
what I do love about social media though is that it's a place for us to connect with somebody that is calling and whispering to us, which is what this is a platform to do, and that they get to know you a little bit better. Because I know for a fact that it's about the trust aspects, LinkedIn and Facebook. So we'll put those in the show notes as well. And what is the closing idea that you would like to share about Lori? That Lori is this beautiful, shining example of what in life?
I think I would like to just share that, the world really is an amazing place and it's full of possibilities and fun and joy and adventure. So see what's out there. Like, don't limit yourself. There's so much, no matter how old you are. I saw in the news a woman who was 102 the other day, and she runs a business. She has a store, and she still goes in 6 days a week. She said because she loves it so much. But there's so much out there, and just expand your comfort zone, expand what you do, and try new things.
Yes, absolutely. Do something new every single day. I think this has just been delightful, and I'm so blessed that you could share some of the amazing wisdom that you have. But more importantly, if anybody's thinking of doing a retreat, then please reach out because it's one of my favorite things on the planet for us to share our gifts with somebody, especially on an intimate level. So thank you again, Lori, for being a guest.
Thank you so much, Debbie. This has been so much fun. And you have this, I love your audience, and you're just sharing this wisdom with women who benefit so much. So thank you so much for having me as your guest.
Thank you.